Brilliant. Well, I appreciate your support too.
Good morning. My name is Andrew Hallissey from Colliers. I'm delighted to be joined this morning from Central London by my friend and author of Where Is My Office, Mr. Chris Kane. Chris is the former head of workplace at the BBC and founder of 6 Ideas. Chris, good morning.
Good morning, Andrew, and it's great to see you.
Congratulations on the book. Hot off the press. I believe it's going to be on the shelves some stage later this week. It's a super read. I had the chance over the weekend to get through most of it, but not all of it. But tell me a little bit about, Chris, about the book and your motivation for writing it.
Oh, well, thank you. It has been a labor of love, or as my wife would say, the most frustrating thing she's ever seen me do. I guess the motivations were probably threefold. Overall, I think we as an industry do a very poor job of our relationship with the outside world. And as some people in Britain will have seen, a couple of years back, the British property industry did a perception survey where they asked 4,000 people in the public what they thought of real estate or property. And the results were not great in terms of, I think there was sort of over 73% of respondents had a very negative view. And I wondered why, and I've always wondered why, since we first started, advising occupiers way back when I was at Jones Lang, Wootton, that was now JLL. And it seems that we operate a very opaque system. So this book is designed for business leaders to try and understand our world, our system. But along with that, when I joined the BBC, I was advised very early on to keep a journal, because at that stage, a fellow Irishman who was a director of the BBC said, "You're going to see some very interesting things." Little did I realize how true that forecast turned out to be. And I have 26 of these red and black journals from that period. So I thought I'd better do something useful with them. And I guess, a lot of people who know me will realize that I've been talking about doing things differently for years, and especially about this convergence of people and place and process. So I really just wanted to write it all down and really talk about how we're seeing a huge paradigm shift from fixed to fluid.
So the timing, Chris, of this probably couldn't be better. We're still in the midst of the COVID-19 global pandemic, and over the last 6 months, we've seen people and companies and individuals start to fundamentally rethink their entire real estate and workplace strategy. So in the book, you have a kind of a premise that we're on the cusp of a transformation.
Yeah.
Build out that concept for us a little bit.
Right. Well, I guess it was the people have said it's the look at the Irish that I got the book in the right place at the right time, because when I originally wrote it, I was thinking that if I was lucky enough to get some people to read it, and I was very fortunate to get a mainstream publisher, Bloomsbury, to have faith in me, an unproven author, and I'm very grateful to them for that. But I thought it would be a 3 to 5 year burn at least. And then along came COVID. And I guess one of the on sort of positive aspects, if you can get anything positive out of the pandemic, is that it's forced people to ask some fundamental questions. And we as an industry are guilty of the fact that we never ask ourselves how we can innovate enough. We really pay lip service to it, and when people ask why, that's because we've always done it. Now is the time to really reflect upon this and to look at and this is not about the office per se. The office is not obsolete, but I think our system is obsolete.
So when you overlay that observation with, I guess, your experience at the BBC, which during your tenure there transformed from being an analog-based and focused organization into a digital organization. Is the workplace in the real estate industry about to go through a similar journey to what you have experienced in national broadcasting?
In a word, yes. And one of the things we learned was that our key sponsors and our customers within the BBC, and there was 20-something thousand of them, were not interested in the Landlord and Tenant Act or in how BOMA measures things. They were interested about how can you help me deliver great content. And that's why we, as 100 people within the BEEB and another 2,000 in our supply chain partnerships, all had to rethink how we do things. And that's why we rebranded from corporate real estate to workplace in a long time ago now, but 2007-8, because it was all about getting the show out and understanding the business and speaking the language of the business. And that's where I think you look at our industry, and there's a fundamental disconnect. I call it a dilemma, in that most people on the supply side believe that the client is the investor and they're delivering an investment grade product. Yeah. Whereas in reality, their consumer is the enterprise who all they want is a productivity solution and want to be something to be part of a value chain. Real estate needs to learn more about how value chains work.
Yeah. So if we reflect a little bit over our experiences in the last 6 months, the working from home experiment has, to a great extent, been hugely successful. But conversely, there has been this pent-up demand and interest to try and get back to the workplace, whether that's offices or other environments. And one of the biggest drivers for getting back to the workplace is the sense of community, belonging, the need for social interaction. And from a business level, we could probably describe it as the criticality of building organizational culture. So when you overlay that with some of the issues you've identified in the book, what are your thoughts in terms of how change is going to be impacted across the industry, but also how do we retain and foster and develop that critically important social concept of organizational culture?
And that's the crux of the issue, in that we're all social human beings, and we do crave the ability to interact with each other. And I mean, the office has been a de facto, I go to work, darling, I'm leaving to catch the train, etc., and I'm going to work to this office. What if the office were in multiple locations? And managing teams, if you look at it, most managers of the 20th century thrived on what I call the principle of presenteeism, which actually helps people interact. But there are many people also who don't like many of the people they work to. And, if I had my time again, I'd come back as an anthropologist. And because it's this understanding this human dynamic. So I think, to answer your question, I think leaders, business managers, if manager is the correct title in the 21st century, but we're going to have to work harder in team building to support people, whether they work virtually or in a physical co-located place. And you've seen lots of people now talking about hybrid models and hub and spoke. So the work has been assumed or presumed to always be done in one location. It's a bit like bees going into a hive. Well, the hive has now been distributed across a number of settings because the workers wish to work in a distributed fashion. And I think that is the key thing that many people in our world are not getting, in that this is not similar to the dot-com bubble or the GFC market downturn. This is fundamentally different because the demand is changing because people are voting with their feet. And the issue is that not only job satisfaction is a factor now, but also personal safety and the fear factor. So if people are not going to work for a company, witness the UK government commanding civil servants to come back to the work, what happened? Nothing happened. So this is a whole new dynamic which leaders and HR directors are toying with, which has a direct impact on how space is consumed.
Yeah. So what advice, Chris, would you give to businesses now and today in terms of preparing for this change to make sure that their entire operating models and business models are not completely disrupted?
I think we all have to really think about most businesses as they face into something which is just so unusual, so unprecedented, and is also causing a lot of, I guess, individual anguish, in terms of families. Some people might have been struck down by this dreadful disease. So that human factor brings a different perspective to what would normally be a very sort of anodyne business decision-making process. I would say don't sit on your hands too long. I think agility and resilience are going to be the key characteristics going forward, but also to be curious and inquisitive and to ask that why question. Why can't we do things differently? What's different today, and how can we approach it differently? I can see, for example, workforce strategies moving from being highly centralized to ones which are very significantly distributed. And this is not about remote working, because the other aspect we need to think about is our use of language. Remote working, are you remote? Am I remote? How do I feel about that? And if you talk to, I have the good fortune to know quite a number of behavioral psychologists, and we've teased this out, and some of the language is totally inappropriate. Remote working is one, hot desking is another one. We've got to be much more humanistic in our view, and I think on the supply side, that's where smart property companies will do better by being more people-centric.
Yeah. So playing that out a little bit, with change and disruption, typically there are winners and there are losers. And without asking you to name any individual companies, who are the likely winners here and who are the likely losers?
God, that's a very difficult question. When I was researching the book, it was a classic case of I set out with a certain hypothesis in mind. And I asked a lot of people, both supply and demand side, what is the purpose of the office? And in the last 6 months, I finished writing the book in February this year. And I went to the States in earlier the year to talk to a whole raft of CRE heads. And I also talked to quite a lot of property companies. And I came away saying, do you know what? There are some green shoots coming that people are really starting to think. And then we had this maelstrom of the pandemic, which came upon us, which nobody saw coming, and which has forced us to rethink everything. So I would have think that the winners will be those who've got the courage and the strength of their conviction to go and pursue what they feel is a good model. I think the losers will be those who apply for the ostrich syndrome, the head in the sand, and hope it's all going to go away. Yeah. As I've said before, the office isn't dead. It's not, but it's not going back to normal. I call it a new reality.
Yeah. So some of these concepts have been around for many decades and have been tested both successfully and unsuccessfully. COVID-19 certainly has created a catalyst, Chris, where this has moved to the top of the business agenda, because physically people needed to work from home, and the reoccupation of traditional workplace settings has hit some complexity with the second wave. So to what extent, you started writing the book well before COVID-19, Was this going to happen anyway? And what was the trajectory of that change that you had envisaged? And to what extent is COVID-19 actually expediting it?
Wow, that's a hell of a question. I thought it was going to happen anyway, because we in the real estate world forget at our peril that our entire system is based upon the premise of somebody coming to pay rent, because that's the investment model. And you look at the supply side, and many people very successfully, and all credit to them, have operated the model of build it and they will come. And what I was trying to do was to understand and deconstruct that complicated and for many outsiders opaque and lacking in transparency process of, trying to find new space, hiring somebody like Colliers to help them, and you doing your very best to do the best possible deal and the fit out and the legal process. And if you look at the way our world is going, it's a very convoluted process. And I talk in the book about the hidden paradigm shift, that the outside world has been moving. And I saw this, in really upfront and close around the shift from analog to digital. And I saw that moving also that, as human beings, we're moving from a propensity to own things, to subscribe to things. And you see all of these different shifts and attitudinal shifts, that people are not wedded to one job for life, like maybe you and I were thinking when we started. And people will have a range of careers. So there's huge macro and micro changes taking place. And I think it would have been all underpinned by the world, or the war for talent, if that's the word. So it was going to change anyway. And I think what we have to realize in the world, in our world, is that this is the biggest change in over 100 years. And it really is. If you think about it, I describe it as that the bonfire of change was smoldering, and the pandemic came along and has fanned those flames into a wildfire. And unless we think about that, I don't think our industry will cope with this huge shift from fixed to fluid. If you put it in context, the world of, say, flex space was evolving, and there were forecasts by one of your competitors that they might grow to 30%. You guys have produced a very interesting flex study recently, which compounds the view that it won't be 30%, it'll be bigger. And the concept of space as a service, I see the RSS recently, their valuers are now becoming more comfortable with managing mixed revenue streams. Are we going to see a model similar to the hotel sector for offices, a PropCo-OpCo model? Why not?
Well, building on that, when you consider the legacy real estate and property stock all around the world, we have this transformational shift potentially coming our way. What's the future then, Chris, for cities, for central business districts, and how people live and work and interact with the built environment?
I think all the doomsday merchants are whipping up things which are unfounded. Cities are fundamentally resilient, but cities will only survive where there's great leadership. And I am very impressed by, for example, the mayor of Paris, and who talks about the 15-minute city. And I think there was some press coverage over the weekend saying that people will not be able to drive across Paris anymore. Imagine what you could do to some cities if human beings and pedestrianization were given greater prominence. They would be more attractive. And we've worked on the premise that I call it the beehive concept of people coming into London. And I said to you that one of my great, educators or influencers in my career was Charles Handy, and he talks about He could never understand why there was thousands of people coming into Waterloo Station to sit in glass boxes sending emails to other people in the same glass box. What was the logic for it? And as society continues to question how it wishes to live, the role of the city will evolve. And I mean, we're going to see something different. Now, is that going to happen overnight? I have no clue, but it'll be all dependent upon where we want to go with this.
Yeah. So, so my last question for you, as you look back at a young Chris Kane, full of excitement and enthusiasm about a career in real estate, and all of the wonderful experiences that you've had throughout those years at Disney and the BBC and what you're doing now, is property still a great career choice? And what advice would you give to a young person just starting out in the industry today?
Yeah, that needs careful thought. I think the simple answer, yes, it has great potential if you understand what you're getting into. I was taken by the comments of a young entrant to the industry who's just about to start their professional career, having done the master's down in Reading. And his perception of our industry was, great, I can get in here and make a lot of money fast and not have to do a lot of work. Now, is that the image our industry wishes to portray? No. We really need to take responsibility for, as an industry, and I suppose those of us who've been around a while need to push this, that we need to go back to the first principles of a professional proposition. We need to get really serious about lifelong learning. I mean, it's not about leaving and having a qualification and doing some CPD. The world is too dynamic now, overly dynamic, some people might say, and that means you've got to keep your finger on the button and take every opportunity you can to learn. And we also, I think, for new generations come in, I think they will ask serious questions of the leadership of real estate. Are we really serious about leaving a sensible and a viable legacy as stewards of the built environment for the generations that follow us? We've got to get really serious about carbon footprint, waste, and the overall sustainability agenda, because we owe it to our sons and grandsons and granddaughters to give them some sort of sensible legacy.
A perfect finishing note, Chris. Well, big congratulations on the book. Where is My Office is available in all good booksellers and of course online. And looking forward to continuing the dialogue with you over the months and years ahead.
Yeah, Andrew, that's great. There's a simple website, where'smyoffice.com, if anyone wants to get it there.
Great. Thank you, Chris.
All the best. Thank you. Appreciate it.